Today, folks, we're going to talk about a company called VitalHub. This is a company that I want to talk about for two reasons. One is just the pure fundamentals of the company and the trajectory of both the fundamentals and the stock price that seems to be moving in lockstep with the positive news. The second aspect I want to talk about is the behavioral aspect. I got into it, and we'll review my trades on Prof of Wall Street. Uh, the thesis is still there. The price has gone up since I bought it about since the first purchase significantly, but the average cost basis is about 300%. So it's been a really great buy, and I wanted to discuss those two things together and separately. So that was my plan for this chat. VitalHub, it's actually a Toronto-based company, and they provide basically tech for healthcare, mental health, and I think they've got a lot going for them. But I would love your feedback, your thoughts on the thesis, whether how influenced am I by all these good things and the fact I've had this significant upside to it.
Sorry, could you just
Um,
remind me of your initial thesis?
yeah, I think just going through like your original buys and like the whole story of since you first got into it, and then maybe like the kind of like behavioral feelings um you're getting right now that you want to talk about.
Okay, easy enough, easy enough. Okay, so let's do those two things. I actually have the tabs all queued up for this to share my screen and go through this together. Okay, so the whole history of it. So let's actually just go back into the smart trade history. Just I'll share my screen. So if you look at VitalHub, uh, so I've owned it since the first buy I think was in 23, maybe before that. But if we go into the original thesis, so the first one, now we got to get better at sorting these things. But January, so let's go back. And what I wrote at that time was, this is an investment. It seems like a growth stock. Potential upside was 37. I was very conservative. I was excited, and then there's a growing balance sheet, increasing sales, and it seemed just to be largely undervalued at the time. That's what I thought there. At the end of that year, I wrote early stage company with upside, sector opportunity. There was price momentum, so that was probably affecting my thinking. Momentum, sector opportunity, price momentum. uh, Undervalued, future growth prospects, Middle Eastern partnership announcement. So there were a bunch of like partnerships announcements, fundamentals such as like the NIH in the UK using their services. I just kept seeing them landing all these government contracts, which tend to be large, and I believe they're quite sticky. It didn't seem the price was moving very much, and so I wanted to get in on it. And that was the idea. I was popping up their website uh, earlier, and what they are. They're acute and integrated care. They are basically taking the healthcare sector and infusing it with all sorts of technology from, these are all their different products, operational data, clinical. Whenever I see beautiful information, I get excited as a quant nerd. But they have like this array of services for both physical and like mental health and addictions. And with the movement towards more and more digital quote unquote solutions or attempts to deal with these issues, it seemed like they're positioned for growth. Whereas what would be the alternative, like getting away from digital and moving towards like physical space, which is very expensive. So my thought was that institutions would adopt a more cost-effective approach. SaaS margins are huge. And with the growth, it seemed like they were leading the sector. And I'd looked around at a couple other companies at the time, and they just seemed to be destroying these other companies in terms of their balance sheet growth, in terms of landing contracts. And they could be just creating this deep moat where they have the technology, they have the relationship, they have the reputation. And when I saw the numbers moving, positively, if you look at their financials, I think it was Wall Street Journal. Um, just seeing the growth, I just believed in it more and more and more. And so yeah, I got into it around right here. And you can see that it's gone up significantly. We could spend a lot of time kind of pouring over the financials, but just these quick views, you can see sales and revenue ramping up. This is sales growth. It's not sales, so it's still growing. Like this is growing. So the first derivative is positive. Here, the second derivative is negative, but that's like sales growth being positive is a very good thing. And so, yeah, gross income, all these things are moving definitely in the right direction. And then if you go to the very, very bottom, their EBITDA was growing. I think this is where it came on my radar, was like the shift to profitability, and I got very excited. So we could spend a lot of time on the financials, but at kind of the superficial view for a SaaS company in the healthcare space, it looked quite compelling, and that's why I got into it. So I'll pause there. I'd love your perspective, pushback, thoughts, anything else on the company itself.
Do you have any memory of like what kind of like ratios it was trading at in the past? With, like maybe like the like the sale, like the price to sales kind of ratios specifically, because I know they weren't making money in the past.
Yeah, I think it was to that point. I mean, I think it came on my radar around here. I think that it was the movement into profitability that caught my attention, and I didn't use Wall Street Journal at that time. I think I was using either E-Trade or TD for the financials. So I could go into those. I own it both on the TD account. I own it both in the USD version, and I own it in the US. It's cross-listed on the TSX and also on some US exchange. It might be even OTC. It might be a pink sheet, but it's grown significantly on both. But I don't specifically remember that, as I was using a different platform. And I don't want to necessarily show all my financials on that platform.
Yeah, I just wonder like what the like how that's changed over time. Like if it's like surely that kind of maybe like as they became more profitable, like the valuation kind of skyrocketed. Like, but even looking right now, I still don't like it doesn't seem like any crazy super overvalued type company. Like the growth is just so rapid in their like the sales over time, and it seems like they're consistently able to increase revenue while keeping costs low. So like I guess like what I'm saying right now is like it seems like not a bad price right now, which is pretty crazy seeing that growth over like the last 2 years. So I guess you haven't really stated exactly what you're feeling, but like, are you feeling that you want to start taking advantage of the gains and like selling, or like what kind of feelings are you having towards the stock right now?
The feelings I'm having are that it's up about 300%. And one feeling is a typical feeling of, gosh, I should have gone in heavier. Like the percentage allocation isn't massive. Like, had I, gone in really, really heavy, I put in, I would call it a speculative amount. So it's moved the whole portfolio by accordingly. Like you put in a speculative amount, it goes up 300%. It doesn't make a huge difference. It's not like it's Nvidia level returns or, Bitcoin by, 2010 kind of, whatever, 2015 returns. This is like, 300% returns. So my challenge here is I feel like the feelings I'm having is I got through the initial phase of wanting to sell early. So I think it was that initial training on risk aversion and the disposition effect, which the seminar is later today. I'm very excited. Is I felt the temptation to sell when felt like I was right. I'd gone up, 50%, 80%. I was like, oh, this is great. And I thought, well, why would I sell now? Like there's momentum. So I remember distinctly doing the opposite. And instead of selling, and so I've also have hold, sorry, some of these were hold decisions. Like I felt fearful, and then I felt fear, and then I held. So you could say I own 1,000 shares of it in the TD account. So I guess you could figure that out, how much that is. But I felt fearful as the price went up, and then I chose to hold, and then again I felt fearful as the price went up. I'm not sure if I clicked the same one twice, but it was the very training that we do at Prof of Wall Street was, I want to get out because the price has gone up, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stay in it. And I haven't really touched it. Like I check it, and I could have entered more hold decisions because I do check it and say, wow, this is keeps going up more and more and more. Like the fear is it going to reverse? And few things feel as bad as a saddle award. And if you don't know what a saddle award is, it's that you bought something, it went up astronomically, and then it went back down, and you did zero profit taking, you didn't sell any of it, you just were there for the ride. And I did that on a huge position a few years ago, like was up 40% on it and just took my eye off it and lost about, not quite that much, but about that much on a very large position. And I'll never forget that. So here we are up about 300%. I own it in a number of accounts, and thought as well, is it going to reverse, or is this that situation where it's going to keep going and just do nothing? That's how I'm feeling. I got through the early parts. I felt fearful. I held it. It kept going up and up and up. From $4, it's now at 10. It's or 11. It's 11.70 as we speak. And those are big gains. So yeah, I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Do you even add to the position? Like keep going, because analysts are giving it higher price targets, like 12.50 from Canaccord, and everything still seems good. And we think the final point is, we think about, oh, put money in some safe thing like cash-to. Well, it went up 5.7% today, just today alone. And you can make that in a very short period just holding it. So those are my thoughts. I know that's a lot. But just curious what you're thinking about this, and how would you respond to the idea of, well, is it buy, sell, hold, add more? Like, what's going on?
Sorry, I lost my Zoom for a second there. Um, yeah, I personally think like there's no like screaming red flags. Like all the trends are upwards. The company still shows signs that it's growing. I mean, it is like kind of valued like a growing company. So if growth stalls out, then I could see like a big drop.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, I feel like there's nothing necessarily wrong in holding it, and it looks pretty appealing, like with their like past performance. Like if that continues, then it would definitely be a good hold. But um, I mean, it's still like a pretty small market cap stock with a lot of risk. So I guess anything could really happen in the future for the company.
Yeah, it's quite small. I mean, I was with it when it was like a micro cap. I think what struck me at the time was like it had more cash than the market cap or something. It was like, wait a minute, like you're earning more than your
Yeah.
market cap, and I'm willing to take the risk. And yeah, it's just
I
supporting it.
mean, their balance sheet is pretty amazing. They could like pay off all their debt right now if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the only concern is that they're like almost all their assets are goodwill. So like what does that mean? But other than other than that, like they look financially healthy, good prospects. Historically have been growing at a rapid rate, like in an industry that seems to be becoming more and more relevant. So yeah, I think personally seems like something you'd probably want to hold on to.
I
You could possibly argue that the price is like drifted a bit, but like maybe like in a year from now, it's probably like long term view, it's probably still good.
I had to step away for a sec before, so I don't know if you mentioned this, but um what is your like how long do you want to hold it for? Kind of what is your goal with holding this stock right now?
Patience, like the goal is, I think I approach everything as like a learning situation. This is like from a percentage perspective, like it's made a nice boost to the overall portfolio. The goal is to hold it as long as you should, and to confront the kind of emotional factors that might drive me to make the wrong decision. Like, so the goal is to maximize upside, like risk adjusted upside. That's the goal. Like, I'm not anywhere near retirement. I've got lots of time to take risk. And when you have these situations where the story seems to have played out correctly and keep playing out, like, how do you keep a level head about this? And just because you're up 300% or, whatever it is, or even more than that, how can you make a grounded decision about the future? And I think that's why it's important to get outside perspectives. Like, none of you, I think, own this particular single stock. Would you enter now, knowing what you're doing? Like, so I'm largely influenced by the fact that these gains are part of my calculus, but the market doesn't care what I paid for it. And there's a part of me that feels, now that I feel like I've sort of overcome the disposition effect and gotten out of that gravitational pull, I don't think of it as free money. And I think that's not to go way beyond your question, Tara, but I've seen this, like Jack Schwager and people talk about this, and the market wizards, and I hear this over and over, like, well, sell your original principal, like whatever your original investment, everything is like free money after that. And I just don't know that I understand that idea, because you're basing your decision myopically on what you're going through, but the market doesn't care. So it doesn't really matter what I paid for it. It's like, if this thing's, let's just say it's going to double in the next year, why would I sell a single share? A, I'd be locking in, I'm paying taxes on it. And B, why would I sell anything if it has a future upside? So I think that there's these interesting philosophies that come into it where maybe it's a way to relieve the anxiety around it. But let's say a third of it is the original principle, let's just say, just for simplicity. But if I sell it, then the upside is going to, a third of that won't double. And why would I do that? And I think that's kind of what I'm going through is, yes, I'm tempted to sell the original principle, the original investment, but if the upside's still good, then why would I do that just to feel better about it? So those are, I'm not asking you to necessarily answer the question, but that's what I'm struggling with is, don't get a saddle award, do some profit taking, sure, take the tax hit on it. But if this thing's going to keep going up, then it's just better to keep the capital in versus, yeah, it could reverse at any second. It just doesn't seem to be.
Right. So with that being said, like, is there any major indicator that would then for sure make you want to buy more hypothetically at this stage, or in the future, if you saw something that would say, okay, I definitely need to sell now?
Well, there's price, and people largely respond to price. Like, retail largely is, price is like the voice of God to people versus fundamentals. Whereas I think a more sophisticated investor sees price as the reflection of those of people's opinions at the time, which may have nothing to do with the actual fundamentals going on. So when I see the price drop, so to your question, what would I need to see? If I see it drop and the fundamentals are the same, I don't get too fussed about it. It triggers the fear of the saddle award, which I don't want to get again. But what I'd see is like the same thesis of more partnerships, more revenue growth, like being in that kind of position of power, and to come out of being a $500 million company, still a very small company. So growing to getting more institutional adoption, closing contracts, like the same story continuing to play out would make me buy more. Like, the price alone may or may not make me want to buy more, but I think it may be the combination of seeing this company is fundamentally growing, the sales are great, they're getting, these big government sticky contracts that, that hold for long periods. That would make me buy more versus just the price, I think.
This is actually a really interesting company to me, just because I've kind of been looking for companies that are sort of like this, where software companies in a I don't think this is like a vertical market, in that they're building software for a specific, like, they're not building like a HubSpot, which is for everyone. This is specific software for, you know, patient flow, EHR, all this stuff. In combination, it's also like medical. And so I would probably go to my wife, who uses, I'm sure, a lot of this technology before. kind of looking for something where we both can have a bit of insight into it. I've just been kind of delving in on the software side. This is all kind of just my initial research, and it's like, I think one of the things that they're able to keep costs down is it looks like they're offshoring a lot of their tech.
Oh
Oddly
yeah,
enough, Sri
What
Lanka.
is that? How do you know?
I'm looking at all their devs, and I'm like, all these devs are Sri Lankan devs. Look at this. They've all got names as long as me.
Your cousins.
Yeah, exactly.
You're Canadian. What are you talking about? You're like
I'm probably related to these guys.
probably related.
Yeah. Anyways, that I'm like their tech stack is it's okay. Like it's hard for me to obviously get a gauge, but I can kind of get an indication of where they're at. I don't know. I think it seems pretty continue like what I guess to the original point. It seems like it's still undervalued. That's what I'm kind of getting to the conclusion that it still has more to go. And I think analysts, again, whatever, grain of salt, seem generally in agreement that there's more room to grow. I don't know. I'm actually thinking of possibly even getting in on this. Like I'm gonna probably do more of a deep dive into this, but it seems like yeah. Do you know what's kind of driven? I guess it's just their revenues has just gone up and up and up, and that's just driven a lot of the price increase. But like it seemed like it was a little delayed for the market to kind of realize it, and you saw it before everyone else.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I think that's where it caught my attention. Like they go from, so this is net income. And then when it went positive, I thought, well, why is nobody responding to that? Like for a startup to do that, it was like such a tiny market cap at the time. I thought, here's an opportunity. Like why don't we jump in and like hear the forecasts? Like
Yeah, EPS is on the rise. Yeah, like honestly, it still seems like a pretty solid investment. Like I think that there's
revenues,
I guess what I would want to know is okay, so how long has this company's been around since what, 2019?
Public, I think
Yeah.
here. It's like a relative, yeah, I think it went public recently, but
I mean, that must mean that there were software companies servicing these markets prior. So the good and the bad is that there's obviously competitors in the space. The good meaning that they probably like there's still lots of space for them to grow. Like I imagine that they can start eating into competitor share. So because basically I'm just kind of assuming based on the fact that they're not that new and there must have been alternatives prior to them existing. And then the fact that they're still landing things looks like they've had a pretty good presence in both Canada and the UK. Yeah, it kind of what I would want to know is sort of more about what's their edge. Like what is it that these guys are doing that other medical software companies, they've got their fingers in a lot of different, which is kind of interesting, right? It seems like they offer a lot of different solutions.
yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, just trying to yeah, I kind of want to delve into what exactly is it's funny because this website doesn't look great, which kind of speaks to how like I feel like how recent their success must be. I feel like when it's a big company that's seen a lot of revenue, they haven't had a time to prioritize revamping the website, but clearly they're doing well without it.
It's a lot of products, and they've been acquiring other companies. And the CEO, I remember seeing someone do a video on it and just pointing out he has experience. He's not a rook, like he's a seasoned guy that I think don't quote me on this, but I think he has an exit. People spoke highly of him. He's been in it for a while, like unlike others, they come and just like cash out when the stock goes up and they quit. Like I don't think he sold share. Don't quote me, but I didn't see a lot of inside selling. Well, just in the interest of time, I think we should, just here's something that's interesting. It's on the radar. I, at the moment, don't feel like changing very much. Like I'm tempted to go in harder and to keep doing because I've bought I haven't sold a single share. It's
Hmm.
sat for a while and I don't so I think for now I think I'm just gonna hold. I think that's probably where I'm at is I'm just gonna hold. I think it's probably what I'm gonna do. Yeah. So we have a record of this, and so we're at 1180. Okay. The other part is, I think I'm concerned. I think over 1,000 shares. I'll just put it in here for now, just for record. It's intact. It's intact. There's also capital constraints. Like I don't have like at the moment all the money goes back into Prof of Wall Street. So I'm not doing as much investing in general. And then the information source is just TV platform essentially. And then we can maybe talk about the tax implications, which I think loom over me a bit, the thought of just paying taxes on it when I can kick that down the road. So I don't know. Any other thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
I guess my last question here is how did you find out about this one?
I was doing screening work. This is like during COVID. I went into TD and I was screening for
Screening.
companies that had large EPS growth. And there was there were a bunch of screeners out of, thousands and narrowed down to 4. And this was one. There were a bunch of other sectors. I didn't feel like I understood, like oil and gas to me is, I'd like to learn more about it so I can ascertain what these metrics mean. This one seemed to be really interesting. Tiny market cap, large growth in a sector that was very relevant, growing at the time. So that's where it came on board initially. So if we look at my history, that should show up that's where I initially learned about it, was through a screener. So I did my own, if you want to call it, independent research early on. I think this might have been the later one. I was optimistic. Actually, I was pessimistic. This is going up 300%, not 70%. Yeah, we need to add that to our list. Alrighty, folks.
Nice.
To be continued.